homelessness. She enjoys finding practical solutions to ensure that no one falls into the trap in our system. Welcome, Heather.
So am I, no microphone or am I speaking out? How do I do that?
Oh, sorry, no microphone.
That is okay.
But the owl can do when we have it on like
Oh,
transcription.
Okay.
You don't like.
Stick to this area, don't meander too far. Okay.
Yeah.
I think.
It picks up fairly far, but not super.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for the introduction. As mentioned, my name is Heather Hogue. I've been working in homelessness here for a long time. Utah County has kind of been my home base for a lot of things that I've learned. And then I also work in Summit and Wasatch County, which are different populations. So today what I want to share with you is a lot about Utah County and the resources that we have here. And then also open up for any questions, any pressing questions that you have about homelessness, particularly in Utah County, because that's my wheelhouse. But if you've got other questions about homelessness, I'll give it a good shot. So if you can't hear me, again, I'll speak up. Technology sometimes is not my friend. Which computer? We're over here. Over here. Okay, good. Okay, I got it. So a lot of the things that people usually ask me the first time I meet them, like the very first time, before my name even, is, do we have an emergency shelter here in Utah County? And the answer to that is a resounding no. We do not have an emergency shelter here in Utah County. I don't have one in Summit or Wasatch County either, but Utah County being a bigger sort of urban center, this stirs up a lot of questions. There's a few things that we do here in Utah County to sort of compensate for that. And I'm going to tell you a little about some and a lot about other things. We use hotel motel vouchers quite a bit in Utah County that sort of compensate for the lack of an emergency shelter. Some other time when we're off the record, I'll tell you all about why we don't have an emergency shelter. But it is unfortunately a thing that we struggle with in Utah County here. So community action is one of the big hubs of services for homeless individuals or for individuals that are precariously housed. They provide hotel and motel vouchers through different hotels that are in the area. They do this with a lot of different funding sources, crap ton of funding sources. And then they do these business hours, Monday through Friday. They also have after hours and weekends that provide hotel and motel vouchers through the Provo Police Department. We're very lucky with the Provo Police Department because they are such good partners and good advocates for us. I know that sometimes communities have struggled a little bit with making sure that they're all rowing in the same direction as their police departments. We don't have that here in Provo. We've got a really good team of advocates that work really closely with homeless service providers, especially mental health outreach here in Provo. And I'm really, really grateful that isn't something that we have a barrier to services here. For unaccompanied youth, we do have a youth shelter called Vantage Point. They do accept youth up to the ages of 18. It's a wonderful program. They've got 2 campuses in Utah County.
You can keep talking. They just can't hear you as well.
They can't hear me. I can scooch.
I'm just gonna bring our little owl.
I have such a little voice. I'm sorry. Is that better?
We'll try that and just see.
Okay.
I'm just gonna, yeah. Okay,
Okay.
and we can maybe see if we can find a mic.
Better? Okay. Thanks. Sorry, online people. So Vantage Point is the youth shelter that we have in Utah County. They have a North Campus and a South Campus. And there are often beds available there for unaccompanied youth. Most of the youth that they see who are unaccompanied are actually coming from foster care or from other situations working with law enforcement or foster care agencies. In Utah County, we very rarely see unaccompanied youth like actually on the streets and our populations experiencing homelessness. So, so Vantage Point's a good resource, but it isn't for typically what you would consider unsheltered youth that we don't see a whole lot of them here. It's okay. What?
No worries. Over here, sorry, we brought this.
Sorry, there you go.
There we go.
Okay, awesome, thank you. Another agency that provides hotel motel vouchers for people that are enrolled in services is Wasatch Behavioral Health. Just a shout out to Wasatch, in my opinion, they're the best mental health service provider. They're the best.
On your pants.
No problem. Okay, we're just gonna rearrange a little bit. Yeah. We'll tuck that right there, because I don't have any pockets.
Oh, yeah.
It's all good.
It has a little clip on it.
No problem. Luckily, I have no shame and no sense of embarrassment whatsoever, so we're totally good. I don't know, is that picking me up? I got out of my britches.
This doesn't want to work. Let's see. Okay, mine just gotten turned off.
Better?
Yeah.
Okey dokey. How about if I tether myself so I don't move too far? It's right here.
There you go.
Tethered.
Sorry,
Tethered.
tether, yeah.
It's okay. So Wasatch Behavioral Health does our street outreach, a lot of our mental health services. And, working across the state, they literally are one of the best mental health providers in the state of Utah. The people that work there are just dedicated, they're wonderful, they know everybody. And almost everything I've learned about trauma-informed responses, I've learned from Wasatch Behavioral Health, from their staff and from their teams. This isn't available to the public. These are for people that are enrolled in services with Wasatch or in street outreach with Wasatch Behavioral, but they do provide hotel motel vouchers for people that are especially vulnerable. And I'll talk more here, and we're going to talk about the warming centers and what we do with that. We do have COVID-related quarantine needs, if you can believe that there are the scraping by of COVID funding still left around. We do have the ability to do some COVID quarantine for people who are experiencing homelessness and get COVID. Some of us are on the second and third waves around, but there's some funding for that. And then spring through fall, again, we have after hours access to hotels. So this is like April through October that goes to the Public Police Department. And the reason it's April through October is because we now have warming centers available October 15th through April 30th every year. In 2 legislative sessions ago, there was a House bill passed that really impacted Utah County. It impacted a couple other counties across the state too. Davis County was impacted, and then Weaver County was impacted, and down in St. George, they were impacted as well. That counties of a certain size now are required by law to have some type of warming center available every single night. So for a county like Utah County, where we do not have an emergency shelter, this was quite a departure from what we have done before. So after the legislation passed, our first year, we did a beta run. I don't know if any of y'all are gamers. I'm a baby gamer, basically retro stuff, but beta testing. We wanted to beta test it and see what we could do, and we enlisted the help of our interfaith community. This was kind of a miracle of a thing, and I don't mean to use that like a miracle of interfaith. It's actually truly sort of a miracle what happened with our infant. Oh my goodness.
I'm sorry.
I wonder, it's okay. I've had too much caffeine today, y'all. I'm like a hummingbird. So our interfaith community said, how can we help? And so our first winter, we opened on code blue nights. So this was any night that was about 18 degrees or colder, and we opened in 3 different churches that opened their doors to us. We provided staffing and volunteers. We paid the insurance policy for them. We paid the utility overages for them, brought in all of our supplies, everything. We just said, give us space and we will figure out how to make it work. And we did, and it was great and stressful and all the things, but it was really great because we had a place for people to go when it was very cold. This year is our first year running them. We've been running them every night since October 15th. It feels like we've been doing it for 2 years now because it's been a long winter already with these, but we've really only been doing it 6-7 weeks. And the need that we are seeing is kind of amazing. Our highest night, the first winter in Code Blue was 40 people, 42 people. And we're seeing 85 to 90 already this winter. And as y'all know, it ain't cold yet. We're expecting much colder temperatures because it is Utah. So the fact that we are already seeing 85, 90 people a night when it's 35 degrees out and not 5 degrees out, is a little eye-opening, even for those of us that have been in homeless services for a while. We had churches step up again, but we also had the county step up this year. They donated a county building for us, did some renovations to what we needed. And so we've got 2 churches that participate and host 3 nights a week. And then we have a county building that's hosting the other 4 nights a week. So we provide minimal staff and then we put it out into the community for volunteers. On an average night, we use between 8 and 12 community volunteers per night. They come in, stay the night. When I go, I grade papers. I'm an adjunct, and so I just grade research papers when I go. But it's a nice, quiet night, and it's a really great way for the community to get involved and get more of a one-on-one experience with people experiencing homelessness. Get to know their names, play a board game with them. Say, hey, John, tell me about yourself. When I first started working in homeless services way back, like 17 years ago, one of the things that shocked me out of the gate was how few people experiencing homelessness had somebody who knew their name. That was like really shocking to me. Like how you can go for days or weeks or months at a time without even hearing your own name. And so one of the things that I love about the warming centers being underfunded is that we do have that opportunity for the community to step in and get that experience with people. Familiarity tends to drive away fear because it's no longer something that is unknown. And the experiences that people are having in the warming centers, even though we're getting a little chaotic with 90 bodies in there, are really changing the way that our community thinks about homelessness and more specifically about people experiencing homelessness. I tell people all the time, we're all one experience away. We are all one support network away. I think about when I was in college and like, you know, dead broke, going through my couch cushions for change to buy, you know, potatoes or whatever. You know, we've all done that, right? How many times I called my dad and was like, Dad, I can't pay my light bill. And he's like, oh my gosh, did you miss budget again? I'm like, well, I budget what, you know? Like I have no money. I'm making $6.15 an hour at Taco Bell, right? But I would call my dad and I'd be like, hey, would you help me out? What if there was no support network? That would change my entire life because I couldn't pay a bill. I was working, I was in school. How many of us have a support network that we never really think about keeping us from the brink of something like homelessness? And so that's a really interesting experience for people in warming centers. I've included a link on here, and when I make my slides available, we are always looking for volunteers and we are always looking for blankets. I need enough blankets so we can create a land bridge from here to Hawaii, basically. So if you've got a spare blanket or two tucked in a closet somewhere and you don't want them anymore, we'll take them, we'll put them to good use. But those are the warming centers we're very excited about. Any questions about shelter before I move on to food resources? You're doing good. Just picking it up. So. Sometimes the hours are a little. Okay. I'm a wanderer. Great question. Community Action Services and Food Bank can take the blankets. They're located at 815 South and Freedom Boulevard, so they're just like right across the way. And then also we have an Amazon list of things that we need that can be just like sent directly over. My second greatest need behind blankets is probably either bottled water or ramen, dried ramen packet things, because we go through those quite a bit. It's another thing you don't think about, bottled water. Like, as you see people coming in, and we're thinking 40 to 50 people, and it's 90 people, and they're very thirsty because it's cold, and they're layered up, and they want 3 or 4 bottles. That starts adding up. And so when we did our budgets and everything, it's funny, the little things that you don't think about that become kind of a budget drain. And so, water bottles, they're great fun. Any other questions about emergency shelter before I move on to food resources? Okay. Food resources. So we've got several in Utah County. We've got soup kitchens and we have food banks. This is something I get asked a lot too, is what is the difference between a soup kitchen and a food bank? Generally speaking, a soup kitchen is a place to go to eat when you don't have anywhere to prepare food. Where a food bank is a place to go get food if you got somewhere to go prepare food. The Food and Care Coalition is our soup kitchen and also a hub of a lot of other services here in Utah County. They have things like showers and hygiene and laundry services. They have things like transitional housing that people can apply for. So in addition to hot meals, they really serve a valuable need in our community by catching a lot of these integrated services. They also house Wasatch Behavioral Health, who I told you I'm very fond of because they do amazing work. And then house other community partners so that there's a lot of people right on site that can help with those wraparound services. Touching back on the warming centers,
We did have an online question. What are the hours for food drop off?
for food drop off at Community Action,
Yes.
that is a great question. I will look it up and I will let you know. I know it starts at 8:30, but I'm not sure when it ends. Maybe 3:30 it ends, but I'll find it. Thanks. Good question. With the warming centers, there's always a push-pull. This is the thing that I didn't know until we were going to get these all set up. What do we provide services-wise in a warming center? People ask me a lot too, what's the difference between a warming center and an emergency shelter? A warming center is a temporary crisis sort of based response, where an emergency shelter is the lowest barrier type of housing that is intended for a longer term use. A warming center is going to be night by night. They're going to come in, they're going to put their things down. We're looking at congregate shelter rather than non-congregate, meaning that they're caught in a warehouse rather than individual rooms. We don't have case management. We don't have wraparound services. But the discussions that happened as we were getting ready to do these warming centers was kind of intense. What do we provide? What are the purposes of the warming center? Are we providing food, hot meals, clothing? Are we doing showers and laundry? We ended up with two directives on the warming centers. The first, what do we need tonight to keep people alive? Basic directive. What do we need for tonight to keep people alive? The second directive is what do we do with the warming centers to direct people to existing resources in our community? If we're duplicating the resources that are existing in the community that are designed to help people address the barriers that led to homelessness and move out of homelessness, then we're missing the mark in the warming centers. So as we talk about what we're providing and what we're not providing, everything that we do is with an eye to directing people where case management services are, where mental health resources are, where medical resources. Because as a warming center, we're not equipped. Even if we had social workers on site and mental health providers, we're only going to see people from the hours of 9 p.m. to 9 a.m. and they're going to be asleep for most of that time. So as we look at what we can provide, a lot of people are like, we'll bring in hot meals, we'll bring in all these things. No, those exist in our community already. Let's get people to the work that's being done by agencies that is going well and that offers the references. So that's kind of our philosophy with the warming centers. Community Action Services and Food Bank is our other big hub for homeless services. We're going to talk about those to go through more resources. They do food boxes as well. They do things like backpacks for children over the weekend when they're in school that don't have food to take home. They also stock a crap ton of local pantries in different schools and in different satellite locations across the community. I don't even know how many food pantries they stock nowadays. I know it's a lot. If you go in, there's just a whole like aisles dedicated to the food pantries that they stock. But the work that they're doing is pretty phenomenal. And then we have Tabitha This Way that also does food boxes and other homeless resources in a South County and a North County location. Rental assistance has become sort of a big thing. As rents have gone up, we've seen this across the state. I'm sure y'all are seeing this as we're trying to place people that our rents have kind of gone up a little unchecked. Community Action Services and Food Bank also provides rental assistance, deposit assistance, and utility assistance. So does the Boys and Girls Club of Utah County for families with minor children, and Homeless Veterans Fellowship for veterans. One of the gaps in services that we have right now is for families that are undocumented. If we've got families that have someone who is documented, we can provide rental assistance. But for families that are undocumented, which in our community are mostly people who come legally and then are not able to afford to get their work visas to stay legally. Because there's a huge cost associated with going from that status of coming here legally into working here legally. That cost is tremendous. And so we see that quite a bit of people that are kind of aging into a non-documented status and then often into homelessness as well. And those are very vulnerable individuals, very vulnerable families, because there are very few resources that can help them financially. Sorry, did you get the slide? Okay, I'm like, oh, I'll wait. We have very few mortgage assistance resources, but we do have a couple. Community action, depending on funding availability, they have a couple of funding sources that can do that. And then Provo City's first-time home buyer deposit assistance. I know that they have a big struggle in getting that spent out because you have to qualify income-wise for the fund, but you also have to qualify to be able to afford a house. So that's a real push-pull. But if you get people that are in that sweet spot income-wise and don't have funding for a deposit, it's a really great resource. Y'all know our services for domestic violence, but I put them in here anyway. The Refuge Utah obviously is our domestic violence provider here in Provo, Utah County, and then Peace House in Summit County. We sometimes in Utah County refer out to Peace House, but then the work that's being done from both organizations, I don't have to tell you what amazing work it is. And then of course the domestic violence hotline as well, which I'm sure y'all know. One of the biggest populations of people that are experiencing homelessness that we're seeing right now is a growing number of seniors on fixed incomes. Rent prices are raising, and SSI and SSDI are not in the same way. We're seeing a lot of seniors being priced out of places that they've lived in for a decade or longer because, well, there are no rent control laws, first of all, in Utah. That's a source for debate, and I'm not. Well, y'all know what I think. I'm game, but it's a source of debate. But it does mean that when someone's lease is up, the landlord can increase the rent with very little or no notice as much as they want. So if you've got a senior that's been in a place for 20 years on a fixed income, and they've got a new landlord, the building sold, whatever, and they go, hey, they're only paying $900 for this 2-bedroom place. I can get $1,800 over here with a family of BYU students, and they can, I mean, you can right now for a 2-bedroom. They can raise that price, and then that person on a fixed income is kind of toast. So we're seeing a lot of rent needs and a lot of additional housing needs for people, particularly seniors on fixed incomes. For those resources, we've got the Housing Authority of Utah County and the Provo City Housing Authority, which both do amazing, amazing, amazing work. They're so involved in our community with advocacy and with outside the box housing resources. In the last 7 or 8 years, just seeing the new number of units that they have brought online that are in control for low income or deeply affordable housing costs, it's kind of amazing. I bet Holly could tell you all about the partnership that the Provo City Housing Authority has with the Refuge Utah to have housing units available exclusively for survivors of domestic violence that have been placed by the refuge. So these kind of innovations in partnership with our housing authorities have really been kind of miraculous in our community. There's a new senior housing building that is combined with disabled adults, particularly adults on the autism spectrum, that came up just downtown here, and it's been kind of a tremendous success. I would not have necessarily thought to put particularly those populations together in a housing unit, but they seem to coalesce quite nicely as far as like the needs for socialization, the needs for quiet spaces, and other needs that kind of mesh well together. So that's been a big innovation with the housing authorities. But both housing authorities do have subsidies available for people who are seniors and housing units available as well. And then general assistance, 211, I'm going to just always say 211 is going to be the thing, the bread and butter. If you don't have the app, it's kind of handy dandy. You can put in your zip code and put in what you're looking for, and it'll pop out a whole bunch of resources. And I happen to know that they go through those every single year, so they're fairly current. And and they're pretty expensive, actually. And it's not just Utah County, 211 is available nationwide, it's kind of your one-stop shop for information about services available. When I get calls from like my cousins in Arkansas, they're like, hey, I got a guy that's like, you know, like 211, you know, friend in Florida, 211. It's like, check it out. They're gonna know way more than I know from Utah, because I don't know anything about resources in Arkansas. So that's kind of bread and butter on that one. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about the coordination behind the scenes and what this means for our population of people experiencing homelessness. One of the things that we have in Utah County, that we have statewide, but in Utah County, I'm kind of over it, so I'm gonna brag about it a little bit, is our coordinated entry. So any homeless service provider in the state of Utah that gets state or federal funding uses homeless management information, the software system called HMIS, or HEMIS, if you're fancy. I'm not fancy. And this helps us to track services for people that are going all across the state and make sure that we're coordinating and collaborating and non-duplicative. But more than that, what I love about it the most is that it helps us to be a little more trauma informed as we are collecting personal information from individuals. They can come to an intake with me down here, and then they can go up to the road home, and that intake is in the system, and they don't have to answer the basic questions exactly over and over and over again. We're looking at trauma informed. The fewer times people have to cover trauma, the better it is for them, right? And so this is a really great system in that regard on how we can kind of expedite people not having to repeat their stories over and over again. But our coordinated entry group meets twice a month. And we talk about people on a by name sort of basis. Our domestic violence providers come as well, learn about resources and talk about people not by name, because that's not a thing we can do, but to help coordinate and ensure that those resources are available to people that they're serving. But this helps us to really dig into some of the needs of people experiencing homelessness in our community. And it would be specifically as like, okay, who's got John? We haven't seen John for a while. Have y'all seen him on outreach? You haven't, okay. Has he been coming in for meals at the Food and Care Coalition? No, okay. Where do we have his last address? Can we go find him? We make sure he's okay. Has he turned up on a police hotspot list and getting into trouble? Like, we can talk about and collaborate on sort of that level of communication. And this is happening all across the state. I can speak to it again for Utah County because this is my meeting. I can, you know, it's my thing. But I know that it's happening across the state because of the incredible work that's being done with housing people that are experiencing homelessness. But more than that, getting people involved in the wraparound services that are really going to help those barriers that led to homelessness. Trauma informed is such a huge thing. I mean, I know that y'all are going to be my experts everywhere on trauma informed. But what we are catching up on as homeless service providers is how critical it is to treat an individual's data and an individual's right to privacy as gently as we can. When we formed our policies and procedures for the warming centers, one of the things that we modeled after was something that they're doing down in Cedar City. I met with all kinds of shelter providers across the state when we were looking at policies and procedures. And I will say that the amount of generosity of people that just sent me all of their docs, they're like, good luck, don't die, you know, all the things, was kind of staggering. Like, everybody was so willing to share their policies and procedures and how we do things. Cedar City, he said something to me that like struck a chord. And he said, we let people come in, we give them a shower, we give them food, we get their needs met, and then we ask for their personal information. And I thought, huh, what a world. And so as we were preparing for these warming centers and thinking about how to do this in a trauma-informed and dignified way, it didn't sit well for me that people would line up outside a warming center in the cold and have to give me their name and their birth date and their social security number before we could let them in from life-saving services. For me, that doesn't feel like enthusiastic consent. That feels like coerced consent to me. And I felt very uncomfortable with that. And so as we put our brains together about how can we do this and how can we think about this in a holistic, trauma-informed way, we came up with the idea that we open the doors to the warming centers. Everybody comes in, if they've been here before, we ask them to sign in on a piece of paper, and we can do that later. If they haven't been here before, we give them a gigantic laminated pink sheet of paper. We say, put that down by your stuff. Sometime in the next couple of hours, we'll have a volunteer come by, pick up your pink thing and do an intake with you. So that way it gives people an opportunity to come in, get settled, get warm, and we're not holding that life-saving service hostage in exchange for something that is uniquely personal to them, which is that identifying information. And so that's something that I feel really passionate about. And then again, we're looking at that trauma-informed lens. How do we ensure that people have the right to their own privacy in as much as we can? I hate that we have to collect that kind of information, but the truth of the matter is we do, or we don't get funded. That's really, I mean, that is the bottom line, bare bones. If we don't collect it, we don't get money and we can't help people. But we can be mindful about the way that we collect it. We can be mindful about the choices that we give people and how and when and where they share their information. And so that's something that I'm really happy that we were able to do with the warming centers. How can you help? This is something that people ask me as well. I mean, y'all are already helping because you're pillars in the community where you're at. But we ask people to direct our homeless individuals and our homeless population to services. Something that communities sometimes have trouble with is we're masking the need. If we're meeting the need without directing people to service agencies, provide holistic care and really dig into those barriers, we are often masking the need of what's going on in our community, and we're meeting very surface level needs without the opportunity to invite people to dig a little deeper. And I say that very mindfully, that we are inviting people to make change. We are inviting people to dig deeper, but we're giving them the opportunity to do so. Whereas if we're giving money out on the street corner, if we're giving all the things out on the street corner, often we are not giving people the invitation to come in and meet with a mental health provider or meet with somebody that can really help them deep dive into those barriers. So these are the agencies I ask people in Utah County to direct to because they're the ones that do my coordinated entry. So everywhere that they go in this, they've got an entry point, same assessment, same directed into pathways to services. Not only does this give us a good opportunity to do wraparound services and coordination on individuals, it also gives me good data so that when we go to fight for funding, when we go to bat for people, when I go to bat for new housing units to be built or new money for emergency shelter, I have data that addresses the need that we have and often data that addresses the unmet need that we have. Okay, I don't know where I'm at time-wise. Are there any questions? Where am I at time-wise? You're good. Yep. Anything? Yeah.
So I actually covered Jura County and Henry County. And I know it's kind of like out in but it's not really, especially over Utah, like Jura, where it is kind of like that. And I got some good people, I'm at the CJC, this is not something that I did a whole lot, but I get people who made on meetings. I read them. That's a great question.
Right, that's a really great question. There are a lot of communities, particularly rural communities across Utah that have very resources. There are a lot of communities across Utah that have one service provider. There's a couple that the one service provider is a domestic violence service provider that are really holding down the whole board on the thing. For JUAB, I'm trying to think which local homeless council we were in, and I am unsure. 6 counties. Yeah, so you don't have a lot of resources, even with the LHC there. I will give you information, though, to reach out to the Balanced State Coordinator and see if she can't help you get coordinated with other agencies that might be nearby. One of the organizations that's coming into different parts of the state right now to fill some of the service gaps is actually the Red Cross. They've been coming in different organizations and areas and providing things like a gas voucher Y'all don't even have like bus stuff down there. Y'all are pretty isolated down there. But I will connect you with, the coordinator, my counterpart, so I have Mountain Land Continuing Care. I'll back up, I swim in acronyms too sometimes, so I'll back up a little. There's 3 continuum care across the state of Utah. There's Salt Lake, they're their own world, they do their thing. There's Mountain Land, that's Utah County, Summit County, Wasatch County, that's the one that I'm over. And then Balance State is everybody else. So the Balance State coordinator, who's a good friend of mine, she's got lots of territory that she's got to cover. But she'll know all of the local players that she might know. And you know, it's a hard thing. That's another thing that I get asked a lot too, is if people are staying in an RV, are they homeless? And so I have my own little trifecta that we use for Utah County. Is it heated? Does it have water? Does it have electricity? If the answer to those things are no, then it's a place not meant for habitation, and they're going to qualify on the HUD definition of homeless. If you're staying in an RV and you've got heat and you've got running water and you've got electricity, you're an urban camper. I mean, like, let's be real, right? But like, staying in a vehicle, you might have heat, but you're not gonna have running water, you're not gonna have necessarily electricity. So that's a little easy trifecta that we use. Is somebody gonna qualify for homeless services? But, I know they're qualified. Right. But they're, can you reach out to your interfaith groups? Or have you only got one down there? Sometimes that would really help for something like a one-time funding for gas. Sometimes that's something that interfaith can really help with. Again, that one time being sort of the kicker. But, y'all have close to DI down there anywhere? DI, Springville's closest. So that if you can get them up Springville, we can get them down, yeah. Let me connect you with a friend. That's a tough one. The last email was, I'm so sorry. And they just don't have the gas to get. I'm following you, yeah. That's always interesting, that's another, the game of telephone, right? But y'all. Any other questions? Anybody on the line? If y'all can still hear me, you can go to the. I'm just kidding. I was asking your question, so I was just putting what it was. Oh, no, I have a wicked sense of humor, so it's kind of out there. It. Holly, did I miss anything?
That's great. I just want to quickly talk about our homeless camp.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think I'd be interested to know how we bring domestic violence victims into that experience for your department.
Absolutely, that's great. Thanks, Holly. One of the committees that we have for continuing care is a public relations committee. It's education, how do we get on the same page, and how do we communicate to the public what our needs are and what's actually going on. Last year, as we were preparing for warming centers, we started something that we called our homeless experience, where we gathered community members and service providers, and we did sort of what's a good word for it? It was a mock experience of homelessness with things that sort of substituted for some of the barriers that people experience. So we started over at the food bank, and everybody received a little write-up, an actual story of somebody experiencing homelessness in Utah County in the last 17 years. I pulled them from our records. And as they were going to go through the night, they were asked to think about the experience with the barriers and challenges of the person on that piece of paper. So some of the barriers were things like, this person is in a wheelchair, or this person is 17 years old and cannot rent an apartment because they're not 18, or this person is a 43-year-old mother of 3 experiencing domestic violence and fleeing and has never worked out of a home. So as we walked through, people got to think about like what they were experiencing with that person's story. We had them pick up sleeping bag and like put in at the food bank, and then a number of cans that sort of represented some of the burdens that people might carry and some of the belongings. We walked from there to the soup kitchen, which is about a mile-ish. Then we walked to one of the warming centers, and then we walked all the way across town to the other warming centers, which was about 2 miles, I'm thinking. And it was cold, and then we sat around, we read our experiences, we talked about the experiences, but then we had people with lived experience that shared their experiences of homelessness or domestic violence from a first-person narrative. And these are people that were paid to be there. I feel very strongly that I'm being paid for my expertise. If you're bringing in people to talk about their lived experience, expertise, they need to be paid a living wage. So I want to put that out there. So I feel very strongly about that. But people who would agree to talk about their experience and answer questions about their experiences. And I think one of the things that's most interesting to me is that we've gone through this whole night together, 3-4 hours, we spent time, and our community members, our elected officials, the people there, they don't know who's there with lived experience. They don't know who isn't there with lived experience. They don't even know that's going to be happening. And then it's an eye-opening thing, because I think sometimes we think that we could spot somebody that's experiencing homelessness or has experienced homelessness, that we're going to have an eye for it. They're going to be an archetype rather than a person. And so I really enjoyed listening to the people sharing their experiences with people that they have just integrated with the entire evening, and interacted with as it should be, as peers, as equals, as same footing, but to get to share that experience in a way that was very mutual in that sort of thing. We have another one coming up. I think we're looking at dates in January. It's going to be cold and it's going to be educational, and a lot of fun, I'm thinking. But we did it last year. I think we started at 5:30 and we ended at midnight, and took the last tracks down to back to the food bank to go home. But it was just a really good opportunity for us to talk about some of the issues facing homelessness, and the barriers that people facing homelessness have. And a lot of the barriers that people experiencing domestic violence. It's great. I'll send out a flyer. You should come. It'll be cool. It'll be great. Anyway, no other questions. Thank you for letting me talk to you today. And yeah. Thank you so much, Heather. Sorry about this sound.
Oh, I have a quiet little voice. It's totally good. I've been mic'd a lot in my life.
It's okay, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Okay. Let me.